Hello and welcome back. Now, as a rule, I don't do book reviews. One, I don't have enough of them, and two, it's very difficult to keep people captivated when you are just picking up a book and showing people the pages. So I'm going to talk about it, and then on screen I'm going to put some video over the top so you understand what I'm talking about. Now, back in 2017, as already alluded to with the opening video, the intro, Paul Orner released this magnificent book, Elvis on Record, a comprehensive guide to UK record releases 1956 to 2017, which I thought was fantastic. Now, this copy is a very well-worn copy. I've referenced it so many times when I do my videos, and that is the point of these books. They are great references. One, for the serious collector, and two, it is a historical document that will be preserved for many, many years to come. Now, the initial layout on the original book is very different to the two new volumes that I will show you during the course of this video. It very much started with the singles, then going into the EPs, and then later the LPs. It was spread over 450 pages, and it started at March 1956 with Heartbreak Hotel and I Was the One on the purple HMV label, and it finished at 2017 on FTD's latest release at that point, which was Speedway. I love this book. It was very easy to understand. It was very easy to reference. You could easily look up a label, you could look up a cover, and you could see immediately what type of pressing you had. However, on the two new volumes, Paul has gone more in depth, and I suppose you could say more anal, than any of us could ever imagine. And I was absolutely dumbfounded with the amount of different variances there were on labels, but not just to the labels, but to the covers as well. And there was pressings in there that I didn't even know of. So in terms of why did we need another publication, when in 2017 I think Paul said he wasn't going to do another version. But of course, like everything, you do it once, you think you've done all right. You do it a couple of times and you get a lot better. Now, I'm still looking for that on this channel. But rest assured, Mr. Orner has found it. Now, Elvis on Record Volume 1, 1956 to 1965. Now, what's very clear from the outset is that obviously the book is a completely different size to the original publication back in 2017. It's obviously apparent it is more manageable to pick up. It's considerably thicker than the original book because it has more pages. Both volumes do. Both are limited to 175 copies. So if you want one of these books, you will have to act fast upon obtaining one. And at the end of this video, I will leave an email address that you can contact Paul personally if, and you should, want to put this in your collection. Now, it starts very much, I would say, the same as the other one, but the major difference is it's done in chronological order from whatever was released first. So whether it was the EP, the single, the album, obviously an EP would follow an album traditionally. And it also talks about the different pressing plants, the manufacturing processes, the different labels, as I'm sure you can imagine, the different covers that were used on the singles, the different inner bags that were used on the LPs, Paul explains about the music charts. Now, right from the outset, I would advise you to read both volumes. Then rather concentrate on the pictures. It is really an historical document rather than just a picture book. This took Paul 6 years, 5 of those combined with volume 2. It is a huge undertaking. One, you've got to be crazy to think about doing it in the first place. 2, you've got to think about, I'm never going to get that time back. But you will get that time back, because every time you peruse through this book, it will make you realise that the whole effort was worthwhile. Paul, I doff my cap to you, sir, because this is extremely well done. From the historical documents from Musical Express, right from the first HMV 45s, where Paul talks about all of the different variations, from the gold lettering to the silver lettering to the export labels. Yes, some of this was spoke about in volume 1 or publication 1 from 2017, but this just takes it up another notch, another level. Of course, we get the test pressing records, which were used to assess the quality of the vinyl before it went into mass production, and also the demo presses, which were promotional copies of a record. And not only that, Paul goes into, which I found absolutely fascinating, as you may know from my American series, where we look into the run-out grooves and what information is identified on there. Each letter would identify the engineer who created the master lacquer, who supervised the whole process of the stampers. This really does beg a belief. If you are, look, I'm an avid collector, as you all know. I don't have to have all the different tax variations on the labels, but this book clearly identifies those and will tell you which particular time period your pressing comes from. Absolutely a crazy amount of work. Now, right from the outset, what you will notice also, which is different about this particular publication, is that it also gives you the chart information of each record, each single and each EP. So, for example, Rock and Roll CLP 1093, which I am still yet to obtain a very nice copy of, entered the UK charts on the 28th of the 10th, 1956, and its highest chart position was number 1. Of course, where else would it be? And it spent a total of 16 weeks in the chart. Now, this kind of information is absolutely invaluable for me, because this is the sort of information I like to include in all of my videos. And no doubt we will look more closely at the English or UK discography over the ensuing months and coming years, because this book really is the absolute aid you need to your collecting. And not only that, as I mentioned earlier, it is a real historical document that you can use forevermore. We also have music sheets, which I love to look at, and you can see on screen now. I'm showing you the Jailhouse Rock, Treat Me Nice, Words of Music, of course, by Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller. One of my favourites next, Elvis is Back. Original release date of July 1960. Entered the UK charts on the 23rd of July 1960. Highest chart position, number 1, of course. And weeks on the chart, 22. And we go into re-entered UK chart on the 7th of the 1st, 61. Re-entered the chart on the 4th of the 2nd, 61. Re-entered the chart on the 4th of the 3rd, 61. It re-entered the charts a lot of times, which I wasn't even aware of. We showed a one-sided 33 RPM stereo demos, and the demo side 2 as well, which I imagine is extremely rare. I don't think I've ever seen one of those in the wild. We go right through to 1965, of course, and the very last pressing, Harem Holiday, original release date of December 1965. There the volume will end, having spent a total of 561 pages. Extremely good value for money. I think these cost about £135, £130 in that region. Bearing in mind there are only 175. Only 175 people will ever own these. Of course, you can see these reviewed on channels such as mine, but you will physically want to own this as we move so splendidly into Volume 2. Elvis on Record Volume 2, 1966 to 1981. What a fantastic cover. And I love where the red spot label is blended just behind Elvis. Fabulous cover. Really, really well done. Now, I have number 36 of 175. What did I have on the first one? 151 of 175. I wasn't even aware of the first volume when it came out. And not only that, one thing I didn't show you, which made me extremely proud, and I'm very fortunate, and really didn't warrant to be included in Volume 1, but my name does appear in the acknowledgements at the front, and for that I shall ever be grateful, Paul, because I would never ever get my name in anything else unless it's a local paper, probably being arrested for some particular crime. Not really. So we pick up in February of 1966, Blue River and Do Not Disturb. Entered the UK charts on the 2nd of March 1966. Highest chart position 22, weeks on chart 7. And then we start moving into other singles. Frankie and Johnny, Please Don't Stop Loving Me. A double-sided white label demo. Of course, there were single-sided, there were double-sided. And then we move into Frankie and Johnny from April 66. Elvis' chart success wasn't as strong as it had been in the early 60s, where this album's highest chart position was number 11. And we moved the amount of newspaper clippings, magazine clippings, how on earth this was all found is absolutely incredible. No doubt Paul had some help from his friends. I get by with a little help from my friends, no doubt we all do. Absolutely phenomenal. This isn't, and I will reiterate again, this is just not a picture book full of wonderful pictures. Of course, some of the album art that was designed during the mid-60s, early 60s, late 70s, early 70s through to the 80s, some of were very, very good. But you need to read this as an historical document. And that's something that I was very, very aware of when we started to make videos on particular albums, for example. I would always try to include historical dates and information from that time, because it just makes it more interesting for the viewer, for the reader. They just don't want to see pictures of labels. They want to know what was going on around that particular time frame. Now I'll give you an instance that happened last week or 2 weeks ago when we put out the Something for Everybody video, and I showed the UK labels, alluding to the fact that I believed these were the original pressings of the UK labels, but they weren't. Paul, Eagle Eye Paul, picked it up and sent me an email saying, just to let you know, Scott, those two labels that you showed of the stereo pressing and the mono pressing, they weren't in fact the original pressings. And that was identified by a little spot on the top, which I'll show you on screen now, something for everybody, long play, mono and living stereo. There was no little circle above the RD27224 and SF5106. So that told me I had a slightly later pressing, or certainly a different variance on the label that wasn't on the original one that came out. So thank you very much for that, Paul. I do like to be picked up if I am incorrect. That's why I should have referenced this book. But as I mentioned to you earlier, I've been waiting for volume 2 to come out. What I do really also like is the reproductions of the pictures in here. The colours are very vibrant and very pleasing on the eye. There are just, I could go on and on and on. The amount of information that is included. I'll put up some different images now that I can show you. And of course we go into how many variances there are on the Camden labels. You'll Never Walk Alone, for example. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then of course we then had the cover change, which is quite rare for you to obtain if you have it in your collection. I do not. It just goes on and on and on. I really need to spend a good few days going through all of this and just reading it now. All the promotional stuff, for example, Elvis' greatest hits. 20 years on, Elvis is still going strong. The king of rock and roll, which is never a term that I've used. I don't think he was too impressed with that particular term, as he would always, there was one king and that was Jesus Christ. This is just, come on, you know what you need to do. You need to pull that trigger. You need to get your order in now. 1, get it as a Christmas present. 2, tell a loved one that you can't get by without it. It must go in your collection. So there you have it. 2 fantastic volumes. 3 in total if you want to be truthful. But these latest 2 really do push it on a level that I didn't think was achievable, because it's taken 6 years of one man's life to put this all together. And we should all be eternally grateful. Thank you very much, Mr. Allner. Right, you join me today. As you can see, the room is in somewhat of a disarray because there's more changes. That will be hopefully rectified in the coming week, and I can get back to my normal spot in front of the music equipment. But I didn't think it was right today to drown this out with music. Like I say, it's very rare that I'll sit in front of camera and do a book showing, because it's not necessarily difficult, but it's difficult when you're reading and then you're talking, and it's hard to keep lifting the book up. Hence why I've done it the way I've done it, because one, I do believe it's the correct way to do it, so you don't have to look at me all the time struggling with my guns trying to hold up these weighty volumes, because they are weighty and they are extremely well made and put together. Now, I didn't tell you where volume 2 ended, did I? It actually ends, these are miscellaneous, we actually end at If Every Day Was Like Christmas and Blue Christmas, the Golden Grooves label, which was from November 1981. So I'm sure Paul will invest his time and his life in a volume 3. I'd love to get a volume 3. We'll wait and see if that does ever happen. But thank you very much for joining me today. Something different, but 2 publications that were worth showing you, because they are in such limited supply. You really need to get one now. And before this video has ended, get online and get one. See ya.